Hi everybody, this is Flavia and I appreciate you watching this video. Today I will be showing you how to create a mini bridge note card. You do not need any special die to create this type of note card, and you can use any stamp or die sets that you might already have to decorate your mini bridge note card. Since it is almost Mother's Day, I will be using some Mother's Day stamps and die sets by Simon Says Stamp, starting with this one. This set is the Bouquet for Mom, and I will be using this large image as the focal point of my note card. This stamp set also has the coordinating die set that I will use to cut out my images and the sentiment Happy Mother's Day. I will use my mini Misty stamping tool to do the stamping, and I will stamp many images at once to save me some time. I'm using the Memento Tuxedo black ink to stamp these images because I'm planning on coloring them with alcohol markers. This ink pad is alcohol marker friendly and it will not smear. Also, I'm stamping these images on a piece of Neenah Classic Crest cardstock, which is a heavyweight cardstock and very smooth, therefore perfect for coloring with markers. I'm using Copic markers to color these images, but I will skip the coloring process since I did not do anything fancy here, and to be honest, I'm not really great at coloring. I do love coloring, but I haven't spent that much time yet practicing Copic coloring and doing all of that fancy shading stuff. I stamped enough images to create 2 note cards, and I will show you the completed note cards at the end of this video. Also, even though the stamp sets that I'm using today are not new releases, they are still available, and you can find a supply list of all products used today in the description box down below if you're interested. Once I'm done coloring, I will use the coordinating metal plates to die cut each image, and I will secure them with purple tape so they do not shift as I run this panel through my die cut machine. Using pieces of white cardstock scraps, I will also die cut extra pieces of this large image and of the Happy Mother's Day sentiment so I can stack them later. Once I have my die cut elements ready, I can go ahead and create my mini bridge note card. To do so, we need a piece of cardstock that measures 5 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and we need to score it at 1 inch and then at 1 3/4 from each end of this panel. I also like to flip the cardstock and do the scoring one more time on the other side, especially if I'm using heavyweight cardstock. If you're planning on stamping any sentiments or images, I suggest you do so before folding this panel into a bridge note card as I'm doing here, because it will just be easier. I want to stamp a large sentiment in the center of this panel, so I will temporarily place this large die cut image on top to help me figure out the best placement for the sentiment stamp. Once I'm sure about the placement of the stamp, I will remove the die cut piece and close my Misty door to pick up the sentiment stamp so I can start stamping. I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink pad in the color Royal so it matches the blue skirt. I also decided to add a grass border die cut, and I will also adhere it to the panel before folding it into a mini bridge note card. This border grass is by Honeybee Stamps, and I'm using the Barely Art glue to adhere this die cut to my panel. Since this die cut grass is bigger than my panel, I will trim off the excess with a pair of scissors and reinforce those score lines, especially over the die cut grass that I just added. Now we can go ahead and fold this panel to create the mini bridge note card. The first step is to fold this panel in, following these 2 inner score lines, and then out, following these 2 outer score lines. So basically on each side we are going to fold it in and then out, just like I'm doing here. If you're planning on mailing this note card, know that it will not be a problem, and we can definitely fold this mini bridge note card to place it inside an envelope. But once the recipient takes it out of the envelope, it will pop up and stand nicely on display. Now we can go ahead and adhere the die cut pieces to the card base. I'm using a pair of self-lock tweezers to hold the small die cut butterflies. I find that to be very helpful because it keeps my hands from getting in the way. You can also adhere small die cut pieces to anywhere on this note card. Just make sure that you do not adhere them over the score lines. At the last minute, I decided to do some more stamping using a golden pigment ink by Ottonil just to add some sparkle to the background. Before I adhere this image to my note card, I will stack a few more die cuts just to make it stronger. My plan is to adhere this image right in the center of my mini bridge note card. However, for this to work, we can only glue this large die cut to the right and the left flap of this mini bridge note card. If we were to add liquid adhesive to the entire back of this large die cut, it will be glued to the center of this note card and the note card would not pop up. So always keep in mind that when adding large images to this type of note card, we must not glue it to the center. We must only add liquid adhesive to the outer edges of the die cut piece and adhere it to the right and to the left flap of the bridge note card. Here is a closer look just so you can see that I'm only applying a very small amount of glue to the left side of this die cut so I can adhere it to the left flap of my mini bridge note card. I will hold this in place until the liquid adhesive has dried and then proceed to adding a small amount of glue to the other side of my die cut. As you do this, make sure to test it out by folding it to the right and to the left side just to make sure you got it. For the die cut Happy Mother's Day sentiment, I decided to stamp it again with black pigment ink so I can heat emboss it with a holographic embossing powder by Ranger. This embossing powder adds a lot of sparkle and it is one of my favorites. As I adhere this die cut sentiment to my mini bridge note card, I will again make sure to add just a little bit of adhesive to the outer edges of this piece, so I only glued this die cut sentiment to the right and to the left flap of my mini bridge card base. Simon Says Stamp also has wonderful sentiment stamp sets for Mother's Day, such as this Mother's Day Zinger and the Sassy Mama stamp sets. I love all of the sentiments included in these sets and some of them are very funny. So since I can just pick one because they are all so great, I will use most of the sentiment stamps included in these two sets to customize my envelopes. Inside my Misty stamping tool, I have a sticky mat that is holding my white envelope in place and I will try to cover most of the envelope with the sentiment stamps. I will play around with the sentiment stamps a bit and try to figure out the best placement for each one of them. Once I like it, I will close my Misty door to pick up all of these sentiment stamps at once so I can start stamping. I will begin stamping by using a large ink pad. We will not get a great result at first because we have so many different stamps close to each other, but that is okay because I'm using the Misty stamping tool, which will allow me to stamp over and over again in the same spot until I have this white envelope completely covered with sentiments. However, in order to not over ink this envelope, I will switch to a mini ink pad and little by little I will add more ink and stamp it again over the sections that are missing. Once I'm done, I will remove the envelope from my sticky mat, flip it and place it back on the sticky mat so I can continue stamping on the other side. So with my white envelope over the stamps that I have attached to the acrylic door, I will close the side with the sticky mat over, then flip this platform and press it down before opening the acrylic door so the white envelope sticks to the sticky mat that is on the other side. Once I'm done stamping on this other side, I will open this envelope and keep on stamping over these side seams that the flap of the envelope was covering, so it has a continuous pattern. However, since I do not want to stamp on the inside of the envelope, I will first place a few pieces of scrap paper inside the envelope just to protect it. Since this is a low quality envelope, the ink bled through the paper, but that is not a problem because I have a trick to hide that and I will show you in a minute. Another option is to only stamp on the flap of the envelope so you have room in the back to address it if you're planning on mailing the note card. In that case, you need to place a piece of scrap paper under the flap of the envelope to protect it, just as I'm doing here. And now, using these small heart stamps included in the sentiment stamp sets, I will stamp little hearts all over these two envelopes to cover all of these white spaces that I got between the different sentiments. This way I will get a more fuller look, and it will look as if I had used one large background stamp instead of individual sentiment stamps. And now, to cover the ink that bled through the white envelope, I will add a liner inside by using a very lightweight paper. This paper is by Astrobrights and it came in a pack with 25 different colors. It is only 24 pounds and I love using it for customizing my envelopes. Since I do this very often, I laminated a white envelope that I can use over and over again as a guide to trace the envelope so I can cut it with a pair of scissors later. Using this black mat on my desk as a guide, I will place the laminated envelope one grid line below my blue paper before I start tracing. You can skip one or two grid lines depending on how much of the white envelope you want to cover. I always start by tracing one half of the envelope first, and then, before I trace the other half, I will shift the laminated envelope one grid line to the right so I can create a liner for my envelope that is slightly smaller, allowing just a little bit of the white envelope to show. To adhere this liner to the envelope, I will place it inside my A2 size envelope, flip it, fold the envelope flap back so I can add liquid adhesive to the top section only of my blue liner. Once the liquid adhesive has dried, we can go ahead and reinforce that score line on the envelope so we can easily fold it again. And here we have the completed note cards that I created. To add some sparkle, I went over the large flowers with a shimmer pen and I added either yellow flat back beads or Nuvo drops to the center of the smaller flowers. As you can see, these note cards fit nicely inside A2 size envelopes, and you can definitely mail this type of note card. And then when the recipient takes it out of the envelope, it will stand nicely on display. In the back, there is a small section to write a personal message. However, if you want it to be hidden, you can definitely add a narrow note card in the back, just as I'm doing here. It really is up to you. Since we can fold this note card flat, we will have no problem writing a personal message in the back after the note card is completed. I hope you enjoyed this video and some of these tips were helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel so you do not miss the next one. I hope you have an amazing day and happy crafting!